The notification arrived on Dr. Elena Vasquez's terminal at 3:47 Greenwich Mean Time on March 15, 2053, buried among routine astronomical data feeds. What began as another sleepless night at the Mauna Kea Observatory became humanity's death sentence. The numbers were incomprehensible at first. A rogue planetoid, designation KBO 2053X, half Earth's diameter, hurtling inward from the Kuiper Belt at impossible velocity. The trajectory calculations ran through her quantum processes 17 times before she accepted the truth. Direct collision course. No margin for error. No celestial mechanics that could save them. The thing that would kill them all had been traveling for millennia through the void, a wandering executioner finally arriving to claim its prize. When she cross-referenced the orbital mechanics with every major observatory worldwide, the confirmation came back like a chorus of damnation. Omega, as it was quickly dubbed by a terrified scientific community, would strike Earth in exactly 127 days, 14 hours, and 23 minutes. The global announcement came 72 hours later, after world leaders had exhausted every possible avenue of secrecy and denial. President Chen's voice trembled as she addressed the United Nations Emergency Assembly, her words translated into every language on Earth simultaneously. Ladies and gentlemen, we face an extinction-level event unlike anything in human history. Our best estimates indicate complete planetary destruction upon impact. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Stock markets collapsed within minutes, their digital displays flickering into meaninglessness as humanity grappled with the ultimate market correction. Riots erupted in major cities as people poured into the streets, some demanding answers from governments that had none to give, others simply screaming at the sky that had betrayed them. The footage from Times Square showed thousands of people on their knees, praying to gods who seemed to have already abandoned them, while others smashed windows and overturned cars in impotent rage against fate itself. Every brilliant mind on Earth turned toward salvation, pouring humanity's collective genius into increasingly desperate schemes. The Artemis Coalition proposed launching every nuclear warhead in existence at Omega, creating a coordinated strike that might alter its trajectory by a few thousand kilometers. The calculations were run and rerun until the computers overheated from the computational load. The result was always the same: insufficient. Omega's mass was too great, its velocity too immense. The combined nuclear arsenal of Earth would be like throwing pebbles at a freight train. Project Lighthouse attempted to build massive laser arrays to vaporize portions of the planetoid's surface, creating thrust through sublimation. The prototype testing began immediately, but the energy requirements were astronomical, literally. They would need to harness the entire electrical output of human civilization for decades to make even a marginal difference. As each solution crumbled under the weight of physics and mathematics, the scientific community began to fracture, with some researchers abandoning their posts to spend final months with loved ones, while others worked themselves to death in laboratories that had become temples to human futility. Time moved with cruel precision, each sunrise marking humanity closer to its final dawn. Omega grew from a mathematical abstraction to a visible threat, first appearing as a dim smudge in powerful telescopes, then as a discernible disk that amateur astronomers could track across the night sky. Social media became a hellscape of conspiracy theories and religious fervor, with algorithms amplifying humanity's collective breakdown in real time. Some claimed Omega was divine punishment for environmental destruction, while others insisted it was an alien weapon disguised as a natural object. The truth was somehow worse than any fiction. It was simply the universe's indifference made manifest, a random collision of matter that would erase 4 billion years of evolution in an instant. Churches overflowed with desperate congregants, while suicide cults sprouted like malignant flowers in the shadow of approaching doom. The authorities had long since stopped trying to maintain order. What crime mattered when the courtroom itself would be vaporized? By day 90, Omega dominated the night sky like a malevolent moon, its icy surface reflecting sunlight with the cold gleam of a cosmic blade. Governments had effectively ceased to function, their final acts being the release of all state secrets and the opening of strategic reserves to anyone who wanted them. Currency became meaningless overnight. What good was money when there would be no tomorrow to spend it? Essential services began failing as workers simply stopped showing up, choosing instead to huddle with families or seek solace in whatever chemical escape they could find. Hospitals overflowed with patients suffering psychological breaks, while morgues filled with those who couldn't bear to wait for the inevitable. The few remaining news broadcasts became increasingly surreal, with anchors delivering reports on traffic conditions and weather forecasts for a world that had weeks left to exist. Some continued working out of professional instinct, while others seemed to have snapped entirely, delivering rambling monologues about the beauty of the approaching destroyer. The final month brought changes that could be felt in the Earth's very bones. Omega's gravitational influence began disrupting tidal patterns, causing unprecedented floods along coastlines as the planet's rotation gradually destabilized. Seismologists recorded increasing numbers of minor earthquakes as Earth's crust responded to the approaching mass like a drumhead being tightened before it snaps. The night sky became alien and terrifying, with Omega appearing larger than the full moon, its cratered surface visible to the naked eye. Children stopped sleeping, sensing something primordial and wrong in the heavens above them. Animals exhibited increasingly erratic behavior, birds flying in confused patterns, domestic pets hiding in impossible spaces, livestock breaking through fences in desperate attempts to flee something they couldn't understand but instinctively feared. The few remaining scientists monitoring the situation reported that Earth's magnetic field was beginning to fluctuate, causing aurora displays at latitudes where they had never been seen before, painting the sky in unnatural colors that seemed to herald the end of everything. With 1 week remaining, Omega became visible during daylight hours, a pale specter hanging in the blue sky like a second sun made of ice and death. The sight of it drove many over the edge of sanity. There was something fundamentally wrong about seeing a planet killer during what should have been the safe, normal light of day. Mass pilgrimages began toward religious sites, with millions of people walking along highways that no longer carried commercial traffic. Mecca, Jerusalem, Vatican City, Varanasi, all became destinations for the desperate faithful seeking proximity to the divine in their final hours. But even among the devout, faith began to crack under the weight of cosmic indifference. Priests abandoned their pulpits, rabbis burned their scrolls, and imams wept openly during prayers that seemed to echo into empty heavens. The few remaining government broadcasts urged people to stay indoors and maintain civil order, but the words rang hollow when spoken by officials who themselves were drinking heavily on camera, their composure crumbling in real time. The final day arrived with Omega dominating the sky like a malevolent deity, its mass now so close that sensitive individuals could feel its gravitational pull in their inner ears. The morning news, broadcast by a lone technician who had remained at his post out of morbid fascination, announced that the impact would occur at 1547 Greenwich Mean Time over the North American continent. By noon, Omega appeared nearly half the size of the Sun, its icy surface reflecting light with such intensity that it hurt to look at directly. The streets of every major city had become rivers of humanity, with millions of people standing together in squares and parks, all looking upward at their approaching executioner. There was something almost religious about the sight, entire populations united in witness to their own extinction. Some wept openly, their tears falling like rain on upturned faces. Others sang hymns or chanted prayers in languages both ancient and modern. Many simply stood in silence, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were about to experience. The winds began at 1430, gentle at first but quickly building to gale force as Omega's gravity well began tearing at Earth's atmosphere. Weather stations recorded gusts exceeding 200 km per hour before their instruments were destroyed by flying debris. The ground itself began to tremble, not with discrete earthquakes but with a continuous shuddering that seemed to emanate from the planet's core. Buildings swayed like wheat in a cosmic wind, their glass facades shattering in crystalline cascades that caught the light from Omega's reflected glare. In the streets, people struggled to maintain their footing as the earth bucked beneath them like a terrified animal. Some were thrown to the ground, while others linked arms in long human chains, determined to face the end together. The sound was indescribable, not just wind and breaking glass, but something deeper, the groan of a world being torn apart by forces beyond all human understanding. At 1545 Greenwich Mean Time, with 2 minutes remaining, Omega filled a third of the visible sky, its surface details now clear enough to distinguish individual craters and ice formations. The gravitational effects had become catastrophic. The Pacific Ocean was being pulled upward in mountainous waves that defied every law of physics humanity thought they understood. Tectonic plates shifted with violence that registered on every seismograph on Earth before the instruments themselves were destroyed. The few people still capable of rational thought marveled at the cosmic irony. They were witnessing geological processes that normally took millions of years compressed into minutes. But most had moved beyond rational thought, reduced to pure animal terror at the sight of annihilation made manifest. Children clung to parents who could offer no protection, lovers held each other as buildings collapsed around them, and strangers embraced like family in humanity's final moments. The sound now was like nothing ever heard on Earth, the death scream of a planet, audible even over the hurricane winds that stripped flesh from bone. At 15 hours 47 minutes and 23 seconds Greenwich Mean Time, Omega struck the Earth with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously. The impact occurred over what had once been the Great Lakes region, though such geographic distinctions became meaningless in the nanoseconds that followed. The collision released energy equivalent to the output of the Sun for an entire day, compressed into a single, reality-shattering instant. The shockwave traveled through the planet's core faster than the speed of sound, liquefying rock and metal as it passed. On the far side of the world, observers had mere seconds to witness the Earth's surface bulging outward like a balloon about to burst before the exit shockwave vaporized them in turn. The atmosphere, heated to temperatures that stripped electrons from atoms, became a brief star before dispersing into space. Continents were not destroyed, they simply ceased to exist, their matter scattered across millions of cubic kilometers of space in fragments ranging from city-sized chunks to individual molecules. The impact was so violent that it briefly created temperatures and pressures similar to those found in stellar cores, transmuting elements and birthing exotic particles that existed for microseconds before decay. In the aftermath, where Earth had orbited for 4.5 billion years, only a slowly expanding cloud of debris remained, glowing with residual heat from the collision. The largest fragments were no bigger than mountains, most no larger than automobiles, and trillions upon trillions were mere dust and gas. Omega itself had been destroyed in the impact, its mass scattered and mixed with Earth's remains in a cosmic ballet of destruction that would continue for eons. The debris field would eventually form a ring around the Sun, a memorial to a world that had briefly harbored life, love, art, and dreams. Every human achievement, every symphony composed, every equation solved, every act of kindness, every moment of joy, had been reduced to component atoms spinning in the cold vacuum. The Moon, now orphaned, began its slow spiral toward the Sun, its surface scarred by debris impacts that wrote Earth's epitaph in craters and gouges. In the vast silence of space, where once there had been a blue world teeming with 7 billion souls, there was now only darkness punctuated by the faint glimmer of scattered fragments, the final, fading evidence that humanity had ever existed at all.